Welcome to Teen Writers Club, those of you who have come before and those of you who haven't come before. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of active and lovable characters. These are two traits that make your main characters and even your side characters stand out from the crowd. There are a lot of people who love to write. Let's be honest, writing's fun. For those of us who love it, we absolutely just crave it, and it's amazing. It's just, as a result, there are certain things that will make your writing stand out if you do them, and that's a good thing. You may already be doing these things, and if so, great. This is not a lesson directed at you then, and you feel free to just work on other writing. That's kind of how I work all my lessons. If they don't apply to you, feel free to just write. If they do apply to you, then feel free to take notes, whatever you'd like. So, what makes a great main character? The two traits that I find are best in main characters: they are active in the plot, first and foremost. If your character is just sitting there in the bushes watching the plot happen, or alternatively, the plot is happening to them rather than they are causing the plot, they are just letting the plot push them around, they're going to feel kind of like a paper doll. And they aren't going to feel as real because they're not making their own decisions. They're just kind of going, oh, I got kidnapped by werewolves, help, help. Like, that's not interesting. Whereas if they're going, I got kidnapped by werewolves, I'm going to try to escape, right? That's active in the plot. That's interesting. That makes you go, oh, I'm curious. What's going on? Like, it makes you want to root for them. It makes you want to learn what's happening. It makes you invested in their story. The second thing, obviously, is making them lovable. Now, that does not mean they have to be perfect. We're going to clarify that later. But it does mean that you need to have likable traits. No one's perfect. We all have our flaws. We all have our issues. But that does not mean that we do not have qualities that are not endearing and wonderful and make us good people. Now, obviously, if you're writing a villain, that's different. But if your main character is a villain, that's a whole other set of things. Well. Yes. And even then, if your main character is a villain, they can still have lovable traits. They're just traits that you don't necessarily want to love, but you do anyway. A great example of this is a very intelligent villain can be incredibly compelling and make you go, ooh, that's interesting. Exactly. Or Loki, or different ones like that, where they have this silver tongue ability, where they're kind of like, they could persuade you to buy a freaking vacuum cleaner even if you already had 7 of them. But at the same time, that's what makes them interesting. But at the same time, it makes you realize just how truly dangerous they are, which is what makes them a good villain. So it goes both ways. You can also just make a villain that is completely and utterly hateable, but in that case, don't make them the main character. We won't want to read about them. We'll just be frustrated. All right. So, what does being active in the plot look like? We kind of already gave a basic example, but I'd like to go a little bit more in depth. So, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, acted on or acting? Sorry, my handwriting's bad. So, you want acting. Are they, like I said, being kidnapped by werewolves and just going, oh no, help? Or are they alternatively being like, hey, I'm going to try and get out of this situation. I'm going to try to escape. You want them to be acting with the plot or acting in order to cause the plot. You don't want them just to be like shoved around. The best example of this is if you drop something in a river, right? Typically, that is not going to change the flow of the river unless you're dropping like a huge thing in the river. You want it to be the huge thing in the river where you're like, thunk, and it changes the whole river, right? That's what you want. You don't want it to be a little paper sailboat that disappears because those characters are forgettable, and ultimately we don't really want to read those characters because we're just like, oh, bye, as they get tossed away by the plot. They can also be pushing against the story too. That still is a form of action. Even if they're not moving the plot forward, even if they're actively inhibiting the plot, they're still acting on the plot. You want to make sure that they have equal say. They feel like a person. A great example of this is, let's say that there's a character who needs to get out of being in extreme debt, and it's like Regency times, right? typically, if you're in debt during Regency times and you're a lady, you probably want to go marry a rich guy. If the person is saying, hey, there's this rich guy, I know that he likes blondes, I am blonde, and he is rich, I am poor, let's fix this. Kind of try and get him to want to marry her. That is being active in the plot. That is being saying, I am in debt, I know what I can do to fix this, let me fix this. Being not active in the plot would be the character just going, oh, I'm in debt and I'm poor. That sucks. And their best friend being like, there's a cute guy down the street, and she's like, he'll never like me.
What, Pride and Prejudice?
Yeah, there's a reason I don't like Pride and Prejudice. Anyway, I'm sorry, I don't. There's a reason, and it's because 90% of her protagonists go, I'm a limp noodle. Anyway.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. There are opinions in this room. But the reason why Pride and Prejudice works is because there's a lot of drama that they are acting on, even if they don't act actively to get out of the situation. That much I will admit. They do actively cause a lot of drama. I'm just not a big fan of drama in my books, but that's okay. Other people can be, and that's great. Like, go for it. I have a friend who literally, that's just her books, is basically like spill all the tea drama. And that's totally fine. It's great. It's just not mine. As far as that goes, I will say though, the one I do like is Northanger Abbey. She nailed that one. Absolutely knocked it out of the park. But that's mainly also because I feel like the heroine in that one is a little bit more active in the story, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, moving forward. That being said, you want your characters to act with the plot. Even if it's not super active, like I was saying, you can cause drama that causes more plot problems too, and that's still engaging with the plot. In that regard, her heroines are still engaging with the plot because they are causing more drama and more problems, which is still actively engaging in the plot. Even if it's not my way of engaging in the plot, but that's okay. That's why we have drama, and that's why we have action, and that's great. This is good. As far as that goes, we want to make sure that the main thing is just that they aren't a doormat. They are either causing drama or causing action. They are doing something about their situation. Even if it's not a big drastic something, they're doing something. They aren't just letting the other characters like shove them towards other goals. I would definitely say another part that helps characters to feel more active is show, don't tell. If you've heard of this rule, great. If you haven't, I'm going to recap for those who haven't. When you show, you'll do things like say, she tossed her blonde hair, instead of saying she has blonde hair. The reason why one is more active is because you're seeing the action play out while giving description, whereas the other is simply stating facts. It feels a lot more passive because you're simply observing the main character, rather than watching them live their life and therefore getting more information from them. It also feels more natural because that's what we do in real life, right? You watch people and go, oh, they have blonde hair, but you don't just think they have blonde hair. You're just like, interesting, they have blonde hair. They might be messing with the blonde hair that makes you notice it. They might have a hat on that's covering part of their blonde hair, you know.
Or their blonde hair is awesome.
Yes, or it's just so awesome that you're like, wow. That's also an action of watching their hair flow in the wind epically and going, dang.
Or on the other side, it could be taboo. We have like two different, like opposite countries. One of them has dark
This is
hair,
true.
one of them has blonde. We have this person who's like a citizen in dark hair country, but she has like a blonde hair like parents, so she has blonde hair, and they're all like, evil!
This is also fair. There are all sorts of different things like that. There are all sorts of different things that you can observe about a person, generally through their actions. Most of the time, someone isn't just standing there like a mannequin while you observe them. That would be creepy. So generally the person has to move actively. Part of this too is describing how people react to something. For example, if you have a scene where they're like, to reference back to Jane Austen, that they're gossiping, right? You have a lot of gossip going on. The main character may not even say anything to contribute to the gossip, but them reacting to the gossip is going to make us more interested than if we just heard the gossip. If we're just listening to the gossip, listening to the stuff happen, we're like, Okay, why do we care? But if you're listening to the gossip and they're like gritting their teeth and like clenching their fists, you're going, oh, that someone's mad. Like, why are you so mad? And it makes you want more. It makes you think about the character and go, I'm intrigued.
Wickham.
Very much. That is very true. All right. So, next thing we are going to talk about is making a character lovable and why it's important. So, imagine that you are going through a tour of wherever country or state or whatever that you've ever wanted to visit. Your dream place that you've wanted to visit, right? Now, imagine you love that place. You've always wanted to be in that place. It's super fun. But then your tour guide is a complete and utter jerk. You no longer are interested, right? You just want to get off the bus. You're like, I don't care how much I like this country. I don't like you. You're a jerk. That makes it no longer interesting. It's the same thing with your main character. If your main character is a complete and utter jerk, your reader does not want to read about them. Your reader wants to get off the bus and exit. Your main character is the tour guide for the world. Yes, they are moving through the plot. Yes, they are experiencing things. Yes, they're their own character. But in a way, they're giving the reader a tour through the world by them watching them experience it, right? So if they hate the tour guide, they're going to want to stop the tour, which means they aren't going to want to read the book. So you got to make sure that your character has some lovable traits, even if they're a villain, because we need to be able to feel like we're compelled to keep reading, like we're compelled to be interested. If the tour guide, let's say, has questionable morals, you might be a little bit scared to be on that tour bus. But if they also happen to be like very attractive and like well-spoken, you also will probably be like, okay, I'll stay on the bus until further red flags show up. That's exactly. That's the version of a villain driving the story. If the villain's driving the story, that's how you want them to feel. Exactly. You want them to feel like, okay, I like you, but I also hate you. We'll see how this goes. You're compelled forward, but you also, see the red flags, you acknowledge them, but you are compelled to keep reading because there are likable attributes.
Artemis the definition of that.
He very much is. He's a very interesting character, for sure. Now, here's the tricky part. Sometimes we want our characters to seem irredeemable at first. The classic redemption arc.
Artemis fell. Said that like 5 times.
It is a great example. The example that I'm going to use for today, and it's okay if you don't actually know this example, but for those of you who do, you will know what I'm talking about. Zuko.
Yeah!
Yeah! From Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's
But
so
the reason
good.
it's so good is because you see the pieces and shriveled up little flecks of good in him before he lets them blossom, right? You see those flecks. If you hadn't have seen those itty little seeds of good in him, you probably would be like, ugh, no, get away from me. But because you see that he has tiny little pieces of good in him, you're like, oh, yay. You're excited.
Uncle Iroh.
Also, Uncle Iroh does help him to be more lovable, absolutely. Because he sees the good in him that we have yet to see in the beginning. We want our characters to border on unlikable, but we don't want them to be unlikable. Here's the issue with the redemption arc. A lot of people think they have to start out as the worst person on the planet in order to be redeemable. No. Generally, you do not want a psychotic serial killer to be your main redeemable villain.
Oh, I'm reading this series.
As far as that goes, you want them to border on unlikable. You want them to seem unlikable, but then there are reasons to like them. For example, if you were to theoretically make a serial killer likable, what you'd have to do is justify their actions somehow. Are they only killing bad guys? Are they only killing people who they think deserve it and are terrible people? Are they, do they think they're in the right for whatever reason?
There's this big organization that killed his little sister and he went crazy and killed all of them.
Exactly, like that
Yeah.
still makes it likable.
I'm watching a case study of Bonnie Toes right now.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes them likable, right? You're like, okay, wrong choice, bad, but also I
Also, like,
see the point. Exactly.
I see.
Like you're like, I still see how you can be relatable even if you're psychotic. You're like, I kind of get where you're coming from. Also no, but kind of. You want to make sure that they also have those traits that make them innately human, that make them flawed, but still, like I said, likable. The reason I say this is because I've noticed an increase in characters that people are writing that are completely and utterly detestable through and through, and then they have a slightly better time, and everyone's like, they're redeemed, and I'm like, no, that is, nope, that is not what happened. In that case, you also have to make sure that you foreshadow well that they can be redeemed. Because if you do not foreshadow that they can be redeemed, and then all of a sudden they're just like, poof, redeemed! Everyone's like, pardon? I thought this was the villain. What happened? You don't want to leave your reader at a complete loss for words.
Mother.
You want to make sure that they see it coming a little bit. Also, a great rule for this is actually, funnily enough, I learned this from someone else who called it the Zuko rule, which I thought was fun. Although it does apply to any redeemable character. You want to spend twice as much time redeeming them as you spend making them hateable. So as a result, if you spend 1/3 of the book making them hateable, you need to spend 2/3 of the book making them likable. This is another place where some people fall flat. They'll try to make a redeemable character, but what they'll do is they'll say, oh, I made them unlikable for half the book, and then I redeemed them in the other half. And it's like, you need double the amount in order to have them feel truly redeemed. Yes, question?
I'm reading this series, and it's about this character who used to bully this deaf girl.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think I'm familiar with this one.
the first book is just him. It's just a flashback to him
being the worst.
Yeah, being the absolute worst. And then the second, and then at the end of the first book, he's like waits and he apologizes and stuff
and fixes things.
And then there's more books.
Exactly,
so
but there's more books because you need more to fully develop it. Hello! Please feel free to grab more chairs because it looks like we'll need more chairs. Heck yeah.
Not empty.
Can someone please close the door? Just because I don't want to be, I tend to be very loud. Oh, that works too.
How dare you?
Thank you all for having. Anyway, so make sure that you don't skip out on necessary redemption. You want to make sure that you spend double as much as you did to make them hateable. You really need the double as much. Otherwise, they're just still hateable. I mean, even with our favorite example that we've been saying all day of Zuko, if we just had the Earth book and then they were like, yay, he's redeemed, we'd kind of be like, but it's that final volume that makes him truly blossom and become everything that he can be. So you need that. You need that second act. You need to make sure it goes from I hate you to I hate you less to I don't hate you.
You are my favorite person in the planet.
Exactly. You need to make sure that you have that arc. If you don't have that arc, then it's just I hate you less. And that's not what you're looking for in a redemption arc. You want them to be likable by the end, not just kind of like, I feel neutral.
I'm looking for that one scene in Arrow's tent.
Yes, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
So many good scenes. Anyway.
It's the main, like, where they're hugging on the ground. And
yes.
like,
He's all like, I don't think he'll forgive me, and
I
then
need
he's
to
all like,
rewatch it.
anyway.
No, not big.
Okay, it's been a while. I have to admit, it's been a while.
Yeah, excuse me.
Time changes. Anyway,
You can never watch
so,
it too much.
you can never watch
That's
it too much.
true, but I'm doing other things.
Anyway, focus. As far as I'm gonna make a couple exceptions to this rule and like talk about other things that people think are exceptions but aren't. An example of this is trauma. Yes, trauma can cause you to lash out and react badly. 100%, that's a thing. However, trauma does not excuse you to be a total jerk. Does it excuse some jerky actions? Sure. But does that excuse you to be an absolute jerk? No. For example, Zuko has tons of trauma, but he also owns his own actions and realizes when he should do better. And he doesn't just say, oh, well, if my father had been nicer. Oh, well, if my, like, he could, but he doesn't.
If my sister were a psycho.
Exactly. He could be like, if my sister weren't a psycho, if my dad wasn't a psycho, he could totally do that. 100% he could do that. But he chooses not to, and that's what makes him likable, is the fact that he doesn't just say, oh, well, I'm traumatized, so deal with me.
It's a big bug.
It's
a
a
Where?
Wait,
find
I
big
wanna
bug.
hold it.
Can I wanna hold it.
No!
Depends on what
funky.
It's
looking.
like a beetle or something. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
it's
we're
not.
gonna try to
Hold on.
ignore the beetle because currently
No.
it's not doing it.
Is it inside?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in the ah.
Oh, cute.
It's just a bug.
Bugs are
see
great,
it.
man.
Bugs are gross.
Oh, it's right on the.
Actually, it depends on the bug.
on the crossbar. Hold up, move.
I'm just blind.
Yeah.
I have
It's
glasses for a
right,
reason.
like.
It's
Oh
right
my
there.
gosh. That actually might be a wasp, so I wouldn't recommend picking it up, please.
Oh yeah,
It's
no,
black.
Michael, you're
I
not
don't
touching
think
that.
it's a wasp.
Please
Stay.
don't touch that.
Alright,
Let's
so
just
we're
not
gonna
bother
get
it.
the librarian.
Okay,
No, we're gonna open the door.
we're gonna, yeah,
No,
we're
we're
gonna.
not gonna set it free into the.
It's fine. Actually, it's crawling back, so we're just gonna leave it there and not touch it anymore.
It's just a bug.
Does anyone by chance have that wasp spray?
One
I
second.
didn't expect you to.
I think it's trying to leave there. It's gone.
I have. We're just gonna leave it there. Because
where did it
unfortunately,
go?
there's nothing we can really do about it. So we're just gonna leave it there. If you want to sit further away, you may. Feel free to rearrange at this time.
I will like run through the hills. I will not judge.
Yep, exactly. I'm like, no judgment. If you want to sit further away or something, that's fine. Please don't. You will get stung to death.
Yes, I know. If you touch
Anyway.
that thing, I'm going to slap you
So,
into next year.
anyway, point is, trauma doesn't excuse your character to be a total jerk to everyone. They still need to be nice, and they need to be nice to everyone. Unless they're a completely irredeemable person, and in that case, why are they the main character? I have questions. But that being said, they also need to be able to own their own actions. A lot of people, are like, oh, well, I'm traumatized, therefore you should just accept me as I am, as a total jerk. No, you can still work on yourself. You can still improve. You can still get better. You can own what is your fault because, exactly, like Zuko, it's not all his sister and father's fault. Did they cause a lot of problems? Heck yeah. But does that mean that all of his actions are their fault? No, he's still responsible for his own
You still have some
issues.
anger issues. that you can relate to.
Exactly. Like,
His
he
anger
has
issues,
problems,
bro.
but they're his issues. Did they have a root cause? Yes, but that doesn't mean that he should just be like, well, I have anger issues, get over it. Like, no.
That's honestly such a mood, though.
It is though.
Like, yes, is it a thing? But it's important to make sure that your main character is lovable and does have the ability to not just blame their problems on everyone else. Like, is trauma a valid excuse for saying that you have problems? Yes. But that does not mean that it is your sole purpose for being and therefore excuses all of everything. It is not your get out of jail free card. There you go. That's the perfect way to sum it up. All right. The last thing that I want to talk about is with lovable characters is the Mary Sue / Marty Stew dilemma.
No!
What is that?
I'm about ready to tell you. But thank you for asking. So, Mary Sue / Marty Stew. It is simply a gendered term, although I suppose you could use an agendered term, but we don't have one yet. So, that being said, Mary Sue and Marty Stew is referring to when a character is so perfect and flawless and powerful that they could theoretically just go like bzzzt and get rid of the villain in page 1, but they don't for whatever reason.
Psyche K.
Superman.
Yep, Superman is a great example. There are lovable Mary Sues and Marty Stews, which is what we're going to talk about. There is a way to
Superman.
make them lovable, but that doesn't mean that you should just say, therefore they are lovable because they are perfect. No. Please don't.
There's an outlet over there if you want.
There are, yes. There are also ones that attach to the couch as well.
In Psyche K, he's like all powerful,
It's
except
on his leg.
he's just chill about everything. He just wants to be left alone.
Right, which makes it. I have watched a couple episodes, so I'm
It's
I'm
good.
aware of the reference.
I love it.
But yes, he's all powerful, but his lack of need to do anything about it is what makes him kind of more a relatable person. So, with a true Mary Sue or Marty Stew, they're simply flawless, and like their only flaw is that they have like a quirky smile, and you're like, that's
Oh
not
my
a flaw.
That's not a flaw.
That's not an issue.
It's a smile.
Yeah, or alternatively, recently I was reading a book. I won't rat out the book because I don't believe in doing that, but I was reading a book where they were clearly a Mary Sue character and their flaw was that they were a complete and utter jerk. And I'm like, that doesn't make me like them more. That makes me like them less.
Not all of us like toxic characters.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't think that toxic is better.
Dude, that took you way too long.
Anyway, so that being said, if your character has a lot of power, make sure that they are then balanced out by something else. For example, Clark Kent is balanced out by the fact that he has absolutely no capability of balancing work and heroism. He's constantly being like, so I missed that date, and I missed that date, but I promise I still like you. There's reasons. And then she's just like, okay. And it makes him more likable because it's relatable to have problems and have things go wrong and constantly be missing stuff and being like, but I promise I don't hate you. And it's like, sure, buddy. That's what makes him so relatable, even though he is way overpowered still, in my opinion. That being said, you should make sure that their flaws aren't superficial. So, for example, they can't have like a scar on their chin and now they're flawed. Like, that's not a flaw.
Battle scars.
Like scars are epic, but you can't have that be their only flaw. You also want to make sure that if they are not just superficial, you want to make sure that their flaws are not things that make them more unlikable. Because they're already unlikable because of their overpoweredness, because it's not relatable to have someone be that overpowered. I don't know about you, but none of us were born with like awesome superpowers to fly and shoot lasers out of our eyes.
Yeah, you
know that?
You don't know anything.
Theoretically, I don't, but also I feel like you'd be on the news.
I didn't buy Kira.
So that being said, they have to feel like a real whole person. And if you're going to give them flaws, make sure that they are not just superficial, they are deeper flaws. And if they are deeper flaws, make sure that they aren't flaws that make us want to punch them in the face. Has it migrated? Hi. Oh, actually, it's not a wasp. It's just, I don't know what it is.
I think it's an ant, some kind of.
Let's just not touch it.
I don't think any of us want to touch it.
I'm clarifying. I was going to say, I'm clarifying for him only. Anyway, that being said.
Not touch
Because
it.
he's crazy.
If you're going to make a character that is like the chosen one or is super overpowered, just make sure that their flaw doesn't make us want to punch them in the face. Have a couple people read it and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, I want to absolutely obliterate them, to 1 being like, I love them, they're my favorite character, how much do you want to punch them in the face? And if their answer is above a 7, I would say make some changes. Generally, you want to make sure that the character does not cause your reader to want to punch them.
Unless it's a
Generally
villain.
bad. Unless it's a villain.
I made a villain once and I hated their guts and
Exactly.
tried to
That's good. That's good. But if it's a main character, you probably don't want the reader to be like, the main character needs to die. That's a problem.
All of you need to read it. It's so good. I love it.
Anyway.
It's my favorite book. Artemis Fowl. He is the villain, and it's
I
awesome.
would, except
Anyway.
my
So,
reading list is longer than the
ants.
Stranger.
/ I don't know what's. Anyway, so that being said, that is the end of the lesson. Do you guys have any questions about making your characters lovable or making your characters more active in the plot?
Could we talk more about Zuko?
I could talk all day about
They're
Zuko
actually,
and nothing
so
started.
funnily enough, the person that I learned the whole Zuko arc term from actually does have a whole slideshow about Zuko and learning from Zuko.
Bring them here.
Honestly, I need to email them
We need
because
the
they're
slideshow.
great. She's a wonderful person anyway. She is just great. Anyway, that being said,
We need the Zuko slideshow.
any other questions?
No.
Okay,
Actually,
cool.
no.
Anyone else? Great, then I will turn off the video and leave it
See you,
to
nerds.
free write time / working on stuff time. And that includes if you want to send anything to me or show me anything as far as writing goes or ask me any questions. Also, if you haven't already picked up the summer writing prompt, it is out on this desk.
I need help with an idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, I too.
Always feel free to brainstorm with me. If you need a paper, I can go grab one for you right now. I'm going to turn off the video real quick.